Okay, today on the Corrective Culture podcast, we had Sarah Hopkins on. We talked about PCOS, endometriosis, and to be honest, like, it was one of my favorite podcasts. I know we say it every time, which was 102, right? We've done 102 fucking podcasts.
Yeah, it was 102. For the ladies, this is such a good podcast to listen to, right? If you're thinking about being fertile or fertility issues, endometriosis, PCOS, she has so many good success stories of women that have tried IVF like 10 times over, and just the basic stuff that changed their life. Also, like sperm quality in men, the babies, the growth, little tips around the baby's growth, the dental work, all these sort of things. It was like really cool information. And basically, what it comes down to is eat your breakfast in the morning.
Yeah, fully. Yeah.
No more nut milk coffees with smashed abos, right? You got to clean this shit up.
But
so
this was like, I reckon, top 5 for the ladies out there. For, like, you know, understanding health and getting fertile.
Yeah, so for the women and the guys that are interested in this sort of stuff, tap in for your woman. But for the girls, definitely listen to this one.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Corrective Culture Pod. Today, we kind of missed, but this is our 102nd episode. So we missed the big 100. I feel like we could have done. I know, but that's amazing. We've done 102 episodes. But today we have Sarah Hopkins. Welcome. You're 102.
Thanks.
So thank you for coming on and thank you for your time and looking forward to having a great 102nd potty.
Hey, congratulations. That's cool. That's an achievement.
Yeah. I remember.
Happy to be 102.
Yeah. Okay, we'll make a celebration out of it. I know there's like something. What's the stat, Harry? Where like how many podcasts make it past 20 episodes or something?
Something like 90% don't make it past the first 10.
Right.
90% past the first 10 podcasts don't usually make it.
Yeah.
You've passed you're way past everyone else. You're killing the pod game.
We try to be.
It's one of them things like, because we kind of started on a whim. I remember I was like, man, we should just do a podcast. Remember how we're just like, we'll see how we go. But then
we just didn't stop.
Quickly, it was like one of them things where you're like, holy shit, this is actually really enjoyable. And like once the nerves are gone after like episode 1, you're like, you just...
Yeah, you get to talk to interesting people like yourself and just get gold from people. It's so, I love talking to people about their thing. Yeah. Because someone, when you're talking about their thing, makes everyone interested in their thing somehow when it's their thing. So you could be talking to me about knitting and I'll be like, fuck, tell me these finer details behind the knitting that I never knew about, Yeah.
It's like a counseling session. I woke up this morning and I was like, I get to go and have a podcast with someone who I don't know her story yet. And it's like, it's inspiring every time.
Yeah. So on your Instagram page, Sarah, I see hormone, fertility, female endometriosis, sort of PCOS information vibe. And God, we need more of you because there is so many, every second girl has PCOS or endo.
Yeah.
And when I first started at the first space we worked out of, I remember I had a really big day once, had 4 assessments. And I think 3 out of the 4, they're all female, and 3 out of the 4 assessments, they had endo or PCOS. And they were like, one was like 18, 20, like really, really young girls. And also they just had no idea about food or choices. And a little story recently, I remember I told a girl recently, I was like, oh, you look healthy, as a compliment. She took it really, didn't take it well. and she's like, what do you mean? You're in the fitness industry. You shouldn't say people look healthy. Which 9 out of 10 people will say thank you to that, Yeah. And she was very victimized by it. But she goes, some girls, I think she herself has PCOS and they have absolutely no control over this. And then I realized she was also in this mindset of like, oh, what? She has no control. No, you can't. It's just something that happens to you and just random genetic thing and you can't do anything about it. So what do you have to say to that?
Oh my goodness. I have to tell you a story. It's sort of, something I just got sparked since you were talking about it. Not something I thought that we would talk about, but it talks to that belief system that so many women and men and people carry. When I sort of started to really niche down to endometriosis, I started to run a marketing campaign where I was like targeting to women with endometriosis on my Instagram, and I'd never done that before. And I got literally assaulted, like abused in my DMs, because I was running ads saying if you want support around healing from endometriosis, which I've got 12 years of like literally hundreds of miraculous stories of people literally being on the operating table and being opened up by surgeons and there's nothing there anymore.
Yeah,
So
wow.
like it's
I
not
love hearing
like,
that.
and I can tell you, stories like that, but it's not like I'm just some snake oil salesperson. I'm using the Chek philosophies, like it's, solid. And the vile hatred that came into my DMs from like beautiful young women that were struggling with endometriosis, like just in this negative belief system that like they were like, you are taking advantage of women, you are, trying to steal money from them, but just they were so angry, and they were obviously exactly like that woman that you spoke to. They were caught in this mindset. Obviously they were, entirely dysregulated in terms of their nervous system to even just go and troll some person who,
Yeah.
if you just took 2 seconds to look at their Instagram account, you could see was a real person with a real story and lots of testimonials. But it gave me a lot of insight, because it was a lot like, exactly like you said, it was like, this is a disease, it's incurable, it's genetic. And there was so much pain and suffering. I could see and feel the pain and suffering coming from these women, and I could feel the hatred coming at me. And I was like, oh my God, like it was, I've never actually felt that level of, I guess, nervous system dysregulation en masse coming at me. And I guess, to your point, like, I guess it's an issue that there is even this belief system that this is something that there is nothing that you can do about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's entire forums on the internet where women are talking to each other about their endo, and they're perpetuating that. So they're like, there's nothing you can do. I had a girl that came in to my DMs who was like, vile and attacking me, and she'd had a hysterectomy. She'd had, she'd had her entire uterus removed. So, and she was obviously just so hurt and angry about that. And she was in her 20s.
Wow.
So there was like no hope of her ever having a child. And she was like, how dare you, know? So yeah, I feel like, I guess culturally, and obviously there's problems with mainstream medical information and health information, there is this belief being perpetuated that this is a disease, which, I mean, it is, but yeah, it's totally, curable, I suppose. And two, that there's nothing you can do about it. That if you have it forever. You may not be able to conceive, you ultimately will end up with a hysterectomy, and that's just patently not correct and not true.
You can see why people are so like it's such a hot topic, hey? Because like as a woman to conceive it's why we are here, and you can see that it would be so painful if someone's questioning that when they've been told and they believe. I feel like people really become like addicted to, because it gives you attention, like I've got cancer or I've got something like that. I'm not saying if you got cancer you're starving, but you know what I mean. It's like you almost become it because you want the attention, or even being pregnant or something like that. Like it's an important thing that we need to discuss here, eh?
Yeah, it's like I think of sometimes, I've known a couple of people that have gone sort of schizophrenic in their life, and they were both leading up to a choice of a reality that was almost so bad that going crazy is the next best thing. Where all their choices, some made it into their reality, and eventually they just fucking flip it, right?
Yeah.
And I think about that girl you just mentioned, hysterectomy in her 20s, crazy. So she's going to have a lot of, if you tell her that wasn't probably the best thing to do, when I think the stat is, I think it's like 90% of women regret not having children, the ones that chose to not have children. There's like a huge stat that when they get to the older years, 90% regret it. And this poor girl, they've
I know.
basically done this to her without showing that, oh, there's these other options, just because they're the people that we're meant to listen to. So she's going to feel it. And if you tell her any otherwise, she's going to attack you, because the other reality of that is accepting the mistake that she made. And,
That's right.
and then there's chaos that is with that.
You can see there's so much inner turmoil, and like you realize, I think it's because like you put doctors up on such a pedestal, and you put these physicians up on such a pedestal, but really it's so fucking simple. It's like, good.
So simple.
Oh.
It's insane.
So when they talk about genetic and you just have this, if you really think about that, if you fuck all the rest off and you really think about what is that saying that you're born with an inherent problem that you're meant to get a hysterectomy, that I don't know the stats, but what was endometriosis 50 years ago? Like you would know more of these sort of stats, right?
I don't know historical stats, but I do know that right now they say it's 1 in 9 women. I don't believe that it's 1 in 9. It's definitely more than 1 in 9.
Yeah.
But that's the women that are, because the diagnosis or diagnostic criteria for endo is like a lap. I mean, there is some high intensity ultrasounds that they can do that can sort of detect the lesions, but for the most part, you need a laparoscopic surgery to go in and have a look at the uterine area and the reproductive organs, so with a camera. So like that 1 in 9 is women that have actually had that surgery. Like how many women are there out there that are struggling every month with extremely painful periods that more than likely do have it, but just haven't been diagnosed? And like you actually said, like it seems like it's like 1 in 2 women, and I would say just anecdotally the same. And actually we just ran a fertility retreat in Bali, and my retreat co-host did some intake forms for like a course that she was running, another yoga course that she was running, and she sent it to me, and she was like, literally every single woman that's filled out these forms has endometriosis.
Wow.
She was like, I've never seen that before. Like everyone has endo now.
Yeah.
And these are all, women in their 20s and 30s. Admittedly, she's a yogi, so maybe a lot of those women are eating plant-based diets and vegetarian diets, and obviously that's probably not supportive either.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a growing phenomenon. I mean, even in the 12 years that I've been working with women, I would say in the first few years, not every woman that I saw had endo, and not even half of the women that I saw had endo. And obviously I'm niching into it now, but over the last few years, nearly every woman that I see with some sort of hormonal issue has endometriosis.
What's the difference between PCOS and endometriosis?
So endometriosis is an autoimmune condition where sort of parts of the endometrium grow outside of it. So parts of the lining of the uterus, sort of like lesions or tissue, I suppose, start to grow outside of that area and in and around, ovaries and things like that. And then there's another condition that's closely associated with that called adenomyosis, where it grows inside of the lining. So it just creates a lot of tissue and inflammation in that area, right? Which creates pain whenever there's menstruation and ovulation in some cases. And obviously that can get in the way of A, ovulation, and B, implantation. So from a fertility perspective. So that's endo. And actually endo, because it's autoimmune, so because the tissue starts to sort of proliferate and grow, it can actually move. So some women with really severe endo, the tissue, the inflammation will actually be moving. Like some women have like thoracic endo, where it's up like in their thoracic. Yeah, one woman I was speaking to felt like it had gone all the way up to here. Like she could feel it in here. Like they've actually found it everywhere, the endometrial tissue. So yeah, I guess it's because it's autoimmune, it can sort of proliferate and spread anywhere. So that's endo. And then PCOS is more, so I suppose endo I call like an inflammatory condition. And then PCOS I call more like a hormonal imbalance condition. So like PCOS is a syndrome. So a syndrome is where it's diagnosed by a series of symptoms. So you have to sort of tick a few boxes. So one would be a lot of cysts, which are basically follicles. So like a lot of cysts on an ultrasound on the ovaries. Another would be high androgenic hormones like testosterone. Another would be facial hair and like dark sort of hair, which again is a byproduct of those androgenic hormones. Another one would be like high insulin or fasting blood glucose, like a type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic state, which is, you know, probably part of the picture. And then another one would be like, and not every woman has this, weight issues, which obviously goes into the blood sugar regulation issues. So there's like, PCOS is complicated because there's so many different symptoms that you could tick one or two of those and the doctors will just like put you into that basket. And if I had to sort of, I guess, broadly brush something across PCOS, I would just say like nervous system dysregulation.
And how,
like high cortisol.
yeah, fully high cortisol. Like these are all things that are so manageable, but if you've grown up eating McDonald's, like, or KFC, and you just in that world, you're not drinking good water, not organic food, like you can see why the numbers are just raising so high. And autoimmune diseases, like basically, you know, even including cancer or things like that, like just dysregulation of the body for so long over a long period of time. Like your body's, if you can't hear what your body's trying to tell you. And what I was going to ask you too is really funny that it's like, well, it's not funny, but it's like it's in the first chakra area, first and second chakra area, like. And we see a lot of, you know, tribal association, safety, security, money, finances, self-worth, like, family. So it's like you can just see from an outside looking in how you need to see it, you know what I mean? Like, and how what would really make a big difference would be starting with the water and things like that. Like, how do you, when you see someone with endo, like, what's your go-to for that?
Well, you know, as you guys probably know, like I studied directly with Paul Chek. So I did all of my holistic lifestyle coaching with him, thankfully, because obviously he doesn't really
that would have been awesome
anymore. So it was amazing. So really like the way that I work with my clients, and obviously I guess it's been my sort of refined down into my personalized interpretation of his teachings and his mentoring, you know, throughout my professional career. But yeah, it is literally the foundations, the Chek foundation. So it's about firstly assessing them and identifying, you know, what the sort of core root cause areas are that are going to, you know, get the biggest effect or the biggest bang for our buck. And I suppose, you know, predominantly they show up as like gut, you know, working on the gut and working on the adrenals or working on that endocrine system / nervous system. And then it is so simple. Like honestly, so many of my clients have said to me, oh my God, like if I had only known, like it's literally not rocket science. Like it sort of sounds like it's diminishing the practice, but like the simple things are the most profound and in many cases the hardest things to do. So it's literally like getting the timing of food right. So making sure they're eating regularly, obviously cutting out the inflammatory food, focusing on organic food, focusing on, you know, getting the macronutrients sorted, obviously at the same time supporting their nervous system where we can, getting rid of chemicals in the household, you know, like you said, drinking quality water, working on sleep hygiene, you know, all of the basic fundamentals of the Chek philosophies and the foundations done in steps and stages so that it's not overwhelming. And the transformations for especially those women that are just, you know, consuming toxins, whether it's, you know, via food or via personal care products or via thoughts or whatever it is, the transformations are so profound.
I can imagine.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I've heard of apparently the blood sugar is meant to be a big thing, right? For PCOS and whatnot. And
blood sugar is a huge one for PCOS.
And I think people don't realize like how up and down their blood sugar is with their choices. Because a lot of people, especially like new guys and girls or whatever, into this that think sugar is table sugar, or think sugar is well, they don't even think of bread as sugar. You know,
Yeah,
they
no,
forget
or
that
rice
all these
or
grains
anything.
ends up being sugar. And so that you know, cappuccino on oat milk fucking latte with a little bit of sugar added or hazelnut
yeah.
with your smashed avocado on white bread.
Yeah.
Is this going to be like a skyrocket up to the roof
Yeah.
and then a crash? When really to the untrained person, that looks like a pretty good meal. You're like, what do you mean? I'm just having a bit of a coffee and some nut milk with some smashed avocado. That's veggies.
So true.
You know?
Yeah.
But really, that's trash in the scheme of how good you can feel. And I'm very aware of how I feel after these things now. Like when I eat something like that, I can feel the energy dip. I can feel when I'm not as happy for some reason. And it's always, for me personally, it's always, my happiness stems from my food and my sleep. If I have my food and sleep on point, and I always get my training in, that's not a problem. But if I get my food and my sleep on point, I'm king. I'm good to go. There's nothing that can slow me down, right? That's something they don't realize, that these girls aren't starting their day. They're all protein deficient. They're fucking drinking tap water. They're on these nut milks.
I know.
And
Coffee too, eh? Like
and coffee.
I'm going through like the funniest thing. Like I'm doing the cleanse right now. I'm pre-filming the cleanse. Usually we do it in January, but I just felt like I had antibiotics in my gut and stuff. But like I woke up this morning, I had off coffee for a few days, had crazy body aches, like just nuts, like my glutes and my hamstrings and my calf. So pretty much linked to bowel and adrenals. So I was like, oh my God. Like, and then I had a quarter shot yesterday of coffee just to get rid of the withdrawals, and it went straight away. I started getting a headache and it went straight away. And I was like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
And I know, like, I was kind of sticking to Paul's thing where he's like, I just have one shot of coffee. So for the last 6 months, I've only had one single shot espresso with cream and water. And I'm like, that should be good. But intuitively, I knew that it's just not sitting well with me because I know it sparks cortisol. My cortisol is already high. And I think, I don't want to get into a long story about why my cortisol is high, but I think it's to do with birth and things like that. And just having a stimulated nervous system, more tips on the sympathetic side. So yeah, caffeine just does not sit well with me. And I think, like Callan said earlier, like blood sugar regulation is the most intense thing it's the most stressful thing for the central nervous system. So if we start to balance that out instantly, like the day I got off coffee, I think my body was so stressed being on coffee that I actually felt amazing. It was like, oh, finally. And then I got the withdrawals off the coffee. So now I'm weaning slightly, but just for people listening, like people on caffeine in general, like it's a fucking drug. Let's not joke around. Like everyone thinks it's sweet because the society says have 3 to 5 cups a day.
Because it's got antioxidants or something.
Yeah.
And even though Paul says that coffee's good, and even though, you know, I have friends that are in the more, I don't know if you've heard of Ray Peat.
I have heard of that name, eh?
Go do a little deep dive
Okay.
and follow some people that are really into Ray Peat, because I incorporate a few of his practices in, but they're a bit more extreme, but they love coffee and they find all this evidence for coffee. Obviously it has to be with a meal or immediately after a meal so that you never have it on an empty stomach, because that's when you stimulate your adrenals.
Yeah.
But just working with women's hormones and fertility, I never let my clients have coffee. Well, typically don't let them, because I want to regulate their nervous system, and all of them are dysregulated. Yeah. And I just think that, and I'll come to your detox in a minute. I just think that most people are way too fucking dysregulated in their nervous system to even handle coffee with food. Like, it's because it's just too much of a stimulant, and everyone's just on the edge anyway, because life is way too stimulating, and also just depending on our constitution, our metabolic constitution. So anyone that has really strong detox, like / withdrawals to coffee, I would say just stay away from coffee.
Yeah.
It's really like people that can tolerate coffee pretty well don't get withdrawals like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like a really strong sign.
That's what I said to Callan this morning. I was like, man, you know what it's teaching me? It's the pain teacher teaching me that, hey, yeah, and I fucking know it. And you know what? I found a good balance before I went to Japan last year. I had so I just have it on the weekends. And I found that that's good. and I still get that, like, it just feels good in my soul. Everything lights up. It's like, okay, yes, you know, on the weekends, okay, but like 5 days off through the week.
Yeah, like I could drink coffee for 2 years straight and I'm sweet.
Yeah.
Like I don't get any sort of
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my
really, you know?
husband's the same as that. Like my
Yeah.
husband has a different constitution and he can have
Cool.
a coffee. It doesn't affect his
You
dream.
bastards.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And Callan's right,
exactly.
because his heart rate's always good. Like my heart rate drops 5 beats if I quit coffee through the night.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's I remember I did hear Paul saying that if he has any female with any sort of hormonal stuff, he just gets them off coffee straight away.
yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the first things.
And it actually that and the blood sugar thing, which they're related, because when you're stimulating your adrenals with coffee, you're going to get a spike in your blood sugar, right? And
Yeah.
if you've got any hormonal imbalances, that's just going to make things worse. But like probably the most profound thing that I do with my female clients is about bringing in regular food, like eating
Cool.
within 30 minutes of rising and eating every 3 to 4 hours, which so many women aren't doing. Obviously, they're just like fasting, accidentally fasting, or just having big breaks between their meals because they're busy, or they're maybe just like on a low key, like little mini fasting diet without admitting it.
Yeah.
And so everyone's frazzled and anxious, right?
Yeah.
All these women, they're just so anxious and wound up tightly. And like just when you bring in nourishing foods and you bring in foods regularly and you keep the blood sugar stable, cortisol levels are just stable because there's no highs and lows in their blood sugar. And I even say to them, because they're like, what should I do? Like, should I meditate? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I'm like, let's just do this first, because right now you trying to meditate is like sitting in meditation where there's, sitting in meditation and there's a guy with a gun standing at the door.
Yeah.
Like that might shoot you. Like, are you going to be able, you could be the world's best meditator, but are you going to be able to meditate if there's a guy with a gun there? No, that's how your nervous system feels. First, we need to actually balance your nervous system and put you into a state where your body feels safe and calm. And then if you want to go and see if meditation can work for you, you can. And usually they'll be like, wow, I could never meditate before because I like had all these thoughts racing. And obviously they're still going to have thoughts racing, but they're like, I can sit into it now, because blood sugar is like literally number one. And that's about eating regularly and eating enough protein and doing all of those
Is
things.
it the same with males, do you think? I know
It is the same.
Yeah.
I know, like guys are always like, yo, I know I can fast because I'm a hunter and
Yeah.
and I'm like,
That's
I
so
don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you know what? The thing is, obviously there's probably some variation in constitution types like between you guys. But I think the problem is that we live in a like turbo society where we're just like amped up our nervous system. Like, you know, I've heard somewhere, and I'm sure you guys have probably heard it, that like the input that we get in terms of information is like more in a day than our ancestors would have ever had in their entire life.
Yeah.
Like, you know, even our recent ancestors of like 100 years ago, like just because of our smartphones and because of all the information that we're getting. So just imagine even just what that's doing to our nervous system versus how our ancestors would have been able to operate. And so putting that context over it, most
That's a
people
good point.
based on life need to just really support their blood sugar from the moment they wake up in the morning until the moment they go to sleep. So fasting ain't that good for anyone, I don't
It
think.
fucked me up. Callan's the same. He nailed the fast. He fasts so easy.
Yeah.
And then I did it, and all-time low in my life. It took me a week to recover. And I did
You're the same as me.
2 days. Like
no fasting.
yeah, and I was like, is there something fucking wrong with me? Like, how come, like, because I'm very emotional. Like, I feel so much. And when I fasted that time, I actually had a full meltdown. Like, it was so bad. And I was like, fuck, wish I could just be like, just push, you know? Like,
Yeah, that was just totally your nervous system being completely
100%.
dysregulated.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe I just got ovaries.
Man, I feel like you're a guru, dude. So maybe you're a shaman and you were like at the tribe, like just like you always had access to food or something. Like, but yeah, and I feel like in regards, because I can, like, I'll get up and I'm not really hungry. to like 10ish, and I can honestly, yeah, exactly. I can have a coffee and just eat like not all day and then have dinner, right? And I know I do get stages of being really consistent with it. I'm always eating good food, but I can definitely skip meals and go to training and whatnot. But I know that's coffee doing it to me too, because I know if I don't drink the coffee, then I feel the hunger. But in saying that, I also think our timing, like you said, is important, because if I'm having dinner at 7 o'clock, that's different to having dinner at 5:30. So if I have dinner at say 7:30, and I wake up in the morning and wonder why I'm not hungry because I only ate fucking 10 hours ago or whatever, compared to having dinner at 5 when the sun's still up, which I would have genetically back in the day. Surely you're having dinner when there's a bit of light still, like late afternoon.
Yeah.
Then you're going to get more hours, I guess, of fasting while you sleep. And then you're going to wake up hungrier because you got an extra 2 hours. Like people think dinner's dinner, but forgetting that there's 3 to 4 hour gap for people's dinners, which changes the way you're going to be hungry in the morning.
Well, I'm just going to say it depends. I'm just going to challenge a few of those things. So firstly, if you I mean, this is what I say to my female clients. So I'm just going to say it to you, and you can like put it in a, it's not me, I'm slightly different box if you want to. But I think it's important for us, for the females that are listening, to know this, because they might resonate with what you've just said. That's a really common thing for women to say. I'm not hungry in the morning. Like I just don't feel hungry for a couple of hours and I just listen to my body, right? So basically, if you don't feel, so this is for women specifically, just let me stipulate that. If you don't feel hungry in the morning, that is because your body is already running on stress hormones. So it's already jacked cortisol first thing in the morning, which obviously cortisol is meant to be high in the morning. But if we don't feed our body in the morning, if we don't provide some energy to our body in the morning, because it's already like, sleep is not a metabolically inactive state. Sleep is a metabolically active state. It's that state of recovery and repair for our entire, body and mind. So we are using a lot of energy in the night to sleep. And I can come back to that as well in terms of the times that we eat at nighttime. So when we wake up in the morning, our blood sugar is low because we have fasted no matter what time we had dinner, for like 8 to 12 hours, right? So we've already fasted, our blood sugar is low, we have been metabolically active all night. And if we don't give our body food, it will literally just use our adrenals to get blood sugar, to get a shot of adrenaline, and cortisol obviously will elevate our blood sugar, and then it's just carries on. So lots of people will feel not hungry because their body is literally feeding itself through the adrenals in the morning.
Right.
And then they're pouring coffee on top of that, which is further going to give them another shot of stress hormones and also going to suppress their appetite. But ultimately, it's going to dysregulate their blood sugar and dysregulate their hormones, especially women. And then I feel like there's another myth, and probably even Paul Chek says this, lots of people in the health world say this, that like eat early so that you are allowing time for digestion to be complete before you sleep, right? I feel like that's like, have you guys heard that?
That's probably what I would say.
Yeah. So the problem with that, and it's, again, this is probably constitution dependent, but I do sort of recommend this for my clients if there is blood sugar issues. With so many of them there is, because they haven't done that eating in the morning to support their blood sugar and not run on their stress hormones, and they've like irregular eating during the day. So if we eat quite early in the evening, what happens is, not always, but for lots of people, in the middle of the night, like maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, there'll be like a drop in the blood sugar, because there hasn't been, like, there's been too long. There's been like an 8-hour period or whatever it might be, because they ate earlier. And so blood sugar will drop down. And some people just have a more sensitive blood sugar, so this happens with them. So there'll be that dip in their blood sugar. And again, when there's a dip in the blood sugar and you're asleep, it's not like you can like reach over and like put something in your mouth to balance your blood sugar, right? So your body will literally use your adrenals to get that shot of glucose that it needs. And then guess what happens? You suppress your melatonin and you're going to wake up.
Right.
And so lots of people wake up in the night at around that time and they can't get back to sleep, or they find it harder to get back to sleep. And that's literally because they've eaten too early or haven't eaten the right amount of things. And that will, ultimately affect their circadian rhythm and affect their sleep as well.
In regard,
So sometimes there's an argument for with a lot of my women, I do this, like, so if they eat their dinner at 6, which some of them do, like eat on that earlier side, then they've got to eat again at like 9. And whether that's like, you know, I don't know, like if they're doing dairy, like an organic yogurt with some honey, you need to have some carbs there and ideally some protein.
Okay.
That was my next question, was carbs, right? So, because there's going to be a difference between that girl having white rice and
Yeah.
sweet potato. So, and also like starting your day. Now, so obviously the carbs at night matter, because that would be that same sort of, if it was white rice, right, you're going to get the spike earlier and then it's going to crash earlier. It's going to be sort of a similar thing to eating earlier. Is that right? Like what you were almost explaining?
So I am not as anti-carbs as a lot of people either. So I think that especially for women, so again, like this is talking to women's health, obviously, because that's my jam. We need carbs. So if you look at, I don't know, I suppose the easiest sort of analogy to use is like if you look at the macronutrient like breakdown of breast milk, it's like 60+% carbs, right? So, and if you speak to any woman, and I learned this lesson, and this is when I changed my, and maybe we can talk about my fertility journey later or whatever, but this is when I radically sort of started to embody and change the way I worked with women when I experienced it when I was pregnant. If you talk to any woman that's been pregnant, the level of carb cravings, and if you've been like I was, like more of that sort of paleo, like low carb, and you go and you are pregnant, it's like Mother Nature, and there's a reason for that, because the developing fetus needs every single tiny little bit of glucose that is coming in for the growth of the fetus. So you literally become insulin resistant. And like I said, the composition of breast milk is predominantly carbs. So women that are trying to fix their hormones and trying to become more fertile, and certainly women that are growing a baby and women that are feeding a baby in the postpartum, so lactating, need heaps of carbs.
Okay.
So women that are doing a low carb diet are actually creating a stress state. So your body, like you said, like we're all just mammals, right? So it's a mammalian body, and it's like walking around assessing its external environment for optimal opportunities for procreation. That's literally all we're here for, right? We're here to procreate, as you know, much as we like to think we are better than that, not us, but like lots of people. So a female body that perceives a lack of any macronutrients, so obviously vegans and vegetarians, the lack of macronutrient is protein. In terms of like keto girlies or hardcore paleo girlies, that's a lack of carbs. The mammalian female body perceives a lack of one of the essential macronutrients, and it says suboptimal environment for procreation. I'm shutting down fertility. So carbs and protein and fat, if someone's doing a low-fat diet, it's the same. They're all really, really, really important for the female mammalian body to signal fertility, and signaling fertility is just like the ultimate biomarker of health.
Yeah.
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 So in terms of carbs, like for me, white rice is fine. I hate brown rice because it's the whole grain, obviously, and that has inflammatory, like gut related issues. So it's always about actually the starch, the white rice. I like honey, I like maple syrup, I like sweet potato and white potato, I like fruit. But that being said, it is all consumed with protein so that it is not glycemic.
Okay.
So if you just eat a bowl of rice, like, and even if you ate, say, a bowl of rice with butter, like that's not the fat, which to like, again, to come back to your coffee point with the cream, fat is not enough of a stabilizer of blood sugar. You need protein.
Yeah.
So
Fuck, that makes sense.
So yeah, it's just like, you know, you don't need to eat a low carb diet to balance your blood sugar. And this, like for the PCOS girlies, like you don't need to go full keto low carb. all you need to do is eat adequate levels of protein, always in conjunction with your carbs. So basically your macronutrients always need to be balanced, and, you know, receiving all three of those macronutrients, that's going to signal fertility and basically just signal, you know, health.
That's really
That's
cool
fucking
information.
good shit, dude.
That's some good shit. What was breakfast this morning for you?
Oh my God, for some reason, I had this like terrible thought today because of what happened that you were going to ask me this. So I'll tell
Cocoa
you what
Pops?
I'll tell you what, Fruit Loops, of course. I'll tell you what I normally have, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I didn't
And
have
what
that.
time too? At what time do you eat too? I'd love to know that.
So, what I do is I wake up in the morning and straight away I have a hot chocolate. So instead of having a coffee,
Yep.
and that I find is like totally like stabilizing, like it doesn't do anything. I can't handle coffee. So I have cacao, gelatin, coconut milk, honey.
Same.
And I and I blend all of that together, and it's probably like more than a mug, you know, like
Yeah,
it's
like quite a lot of it.
amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have like probably about 300 meals. Oh yeah, I do like some mushroom, like a mushroom blend in there as
Yeah,
well.
same. Yeah.
We're twinning. And then, so that's just like straight away.
Yeah.
And then after that, I might have like we've got two amazing gluten-free bakeries here. So I might have like some gluten-free sourdough with eggs, or I make this banana bread that has like a lot of eggs in it that's like gluten-free.
Cool.
So I would have something like that normally. But today, my son ate all of the banana bread yesterday, and I need to get bread. So I was like, I'm sure they won't ask me what my breakfast is today, but I actually don't have anything for the first time. So all I had was like an organic banana, because I was like, my blood sugar is going to be shit.
Yeah.
So if my brain is not firing, I've literally had the worst breakfast ever today. But yeah, that's what I normally have. And the subsequent meal, which will always have some protein and carbs, and typically there's fat in there, I will have that. So probably not long after the hot chocolate, maybe sometimes with the hot chocolate, sometimes maybe like 15 to 20 minutes later. So I'm not waiting very long.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I'm going and exercising or doing anything like that. If a woman is really wedded to like doing some exercise, you know, because everyone wants to do fasted exercise, they have to have something like that hot chocolate first,
Yeah.
because they have to stabilize their cortisol levels and basically stabilize their blood sugar and keep their body from like jacking up their cortisol levels before they go and exercise. But I don't exercise until after.
Yeah.
This
Until
is
after you
interesting, yeah.
eat. Yeah. Have you tested that yourself of exercising fasted compared to not fasted?
I haven't tested it, but I know my body really well, and
Yeah.
I know that I don't do well in a fasted state.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I can see, I can see like if even today, probably I will probably be a little bit less regulated in my blood sugar just because of what happened this morning.
Mhm.
I'll be able to notice that throughout the day. I'll need to make sure the only way to remediate that will probably be I'll have an earlier lunch, and I'll have to make sure that I have a decent amount of protein. And obviously I always try and eat a fair amount of carbs.
With I love asking people the story, and more so a story of when you got into the field of a client. Is there a client that stands out for you? It could be early on or even recent, where it was like they were really struggling and the protocol like completely changed their life. And I know there'd be lots, but is there one that's like, oh, I remember this lady. What's that story?
There's so many because it's been a long time, but probably the one that it's not a fertility story, but it's probably like started the real interest in autoimmune, and that was probably what led me to the endometriosis. And I was always fertility interested and focused, but it was the sort of the weaving of those, I suppose, because I worked with lots of people with autoimmune conditions and got that protocol sort of down. So she had multiple sclerosis. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know what to do with you, because it was like really early days into my career. Like I feel sorry for like the first year's worth of clients, because I feel like I was literally just experimenting with these people, and charging them for the privilege. So she came and she was extremely overweight. Like she was, oh my God, what was she? Like maybe 140 or 150 kilos.
Yeah.
And she was like, knee high to a grasshopper. Like she was probably shorter than me. She was like 5 foot something. So she was really like overweight, and she said, look, I've got multiple sclerosis. And I was like, I don't know what to do with you, but let me just do some research. And I think I'd already maybe read some of Terry Walls' stuff, and just like, read a little bit about it. So I sort of did that protocol with her, but I suppose maybe interpreted it my way and did all of the Chek stuff. And she lost, how much did she lose? I think she got down to like 90 something kilos.
Wow.
We worked together for a year. Like the physical transformation in terms of weight and body composition obviously was profound, but more importantly, like she was struggling to walk, because obviously with MS, it's that degenerative breakdown of the myelin sheath where ultimately they end up in a wheelchair. But she had a walking stick, and she had like a recreational wheelchair for when things were getting a bit tricky. And by the end of our time together, she was just like totally mobile, and I mean, I don't want to say cured, but yeah, she was like she didn't need her walking stick. She wasn't going to need that wheelchair. And just like her complete, physiology had transformed. And actually from her, I got like a flurry of people, because everybody just like watched the transformation.
Yeah.
And went, oh my God, this is, amazing. So yeah, I feel like she was probably the first one that made me go, wow, like, because I feel like even when you're starting out as a practitioner, like if someone loses a little bit of weight or starts to feel a bit better, that's great, that's fine. But you're like, can I really deal with like serious stuff? Because you have that doubt in your mind, like, does this simple stuff work? Because again, like
because it's
we've
so
all been
simple.
taught, and you've been taught, complicated problems need a complicated solution. They need the special expert, or that like, that naturopath that's going to give you 1,000 supplements and get all like propeller head on you and scientific and geeky. And I remember at the beginning being quite intimidated by those types of people and think they probably know better than me. What would I know? I'm just some basic bitch that's trying to help people. So yeah, I would say that she was probably the first one. And then I actually worked with lots of people that had autoimmune conditions, and saw lots of them really properly heal those autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's and rheumatoid arthritis, and obviously endometriosis, and yeah, those things are not genetic, they're epigenetic, and lifestyle is the like literal cure for those.
Yeah.
Ain't that the thing, eh?
What supplements do you really back in regards to, say, a girl has endometriosis? What supplements would they take to support the healing journey?
Yeah. And where would they start?
So I am not a fan of supplements because like the thing that I say to my clients, so usually when I have discovery calls with my female clients, they're like, oh, I'm taking coenzyme Q10, I'm taking a NAC, I'm taking fish oil, I'm taking a prenatal. And it's like, so basically you've seen a naturopath who you've like basically subbed in instead of a doctor, and that naturopath is treating your symptoms with supplements instead of treating them with a medication.
Yeah.
Like, why are you deficient in vitamin D? Why are you low in iron? Like, why do you need coenzyme Q10? Like, what is the root cause of those things? And then how can we address that through nutrition and lifestyle? And guess what? We can. So like throw away all those I don't care how good they are. I know that this is probably controversial and I'll circle back, but like throw away all those synthetic supplements and let's bring it back to working on your gut and working on bringing in the whole foods that are so important. So having said that, there is two things that I do, actually three. So there's two to three supplements that I do recommend, but two are based on food. So because we don't eat the foods that we need for fertility, for egg quality, for optimal physiological function anymore, which is organ meats and shellfish, aka most powerful is oyster. So organ meats and oyster. Most women, when I say, hey, are you cool to eat organ meats and oyster every single week? They're like, gross, because we're not acclimatized to that sort of diet anymore. And that is what we need to get all the macronutrients. So if women don't want to eat those foods, then I typically recommend a supplementation where you're literally just getting a dehydrated and granulated and encapsulated version of those things, because that's literally going to give you everything that you need for a woman and man. And then the only other one. Do you guys have a supplement like a liver and an oyster?
King and queen now on sale.
So we sell uterine tissue, liver, and fallopian tubes from organic cows.
Oh my god!
And then testicles and liver for men, which is like natural testosterone and liver.
But send me your details. Maybe we can take that offline. Well, yeah, we're singing off the same.
I love that.
Like same song sheet. That like my this is a bit of a tangent, so just pull me back in if you don't want me to go on this tangent. But do you guys know Weston A. Price?
Yeah.
So I always talk about like the work that Weston A. Price did, and I like live by Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, that book, because there is no other study that has looked at what those ancient cultures, or not so ancient because it was only in the 1930s, but like what those indigenous cultures were eating. And the thread throughout that whole book was that every single tribe, no matter where it was, and obviously he studied the Inuit in Alaska, he studied Polynesian Islanders, he studied the Maori tribes, he studied First Nations people here, he studied a small Swiss village, a Gaelic village, the Maasai in Africa, like such diverse places and people and body types, and all of them prioritized those foods. And especially for all the young couples that were going to start procreating, all the women that were pregnant, all the women that were lactating, and all the young children. And that's because those were the foods that you really needed for fertility, right? So organ meats, shellfish, eggs, fish eggs, raw dairy.
Yeah.
But obviously to encapsulate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Fun to encapsulate it like liver and shellfish.
Yeah. I get oysters twice a week now. I get a dozen oysters. And I just, Javita? Do you know the website Javita?
No.
Jivita? Oh, she's a ex-Checky too, but she has a whole, like a supplement company that has all food and stuff in Australia, but it's all like high quality, like it's all whole food based stuff. She still has like the isolated stuff, but the highest quality of that. And she just released, not her, but just brought on an oyster product that's, these people go out in a boat and do it by hand from like clean oysters. So it's as good as you get for
in Ireland.
For dried oysters, because
Oyster Max it's called.
Yeah, because when I was early in my like Chek days, I was getting liver and cutting it up and eating it raw and shit, and then I just stopped doing that. So now I'll just take some capsules. I do get it mixed into the minso, so because obviously fresh is best. It's always going to be best.
Fresh is best. I should get back into eating it, because after I had my son, I ate my placenta. Like I chopped it up and froze it and just was like downing it.
Yeah.
It was so good. And just, I think to have it raw like that and frozen properly and then just take it like a capsule is probably powerful. And yeah, blending it into your mince is a really good thing, or buying sausages with it in. And I do try and encourage women to do that, but obviously so many people are squeamish about it. And
Yeah.
likewise, like oysters, for women, the recommended dosage of oysters is literally 6 a week.
Wow.
Like it's not much, although
Yeah.
I guess sometimes it's hard to get them. But the only other one that I would probably supplement, so I'm going to sort of talk like against what I just said, but I just think it's important, is magnesium.
Mm.
Just because I feel like obviously the soil is depleted of magnesium, and just because it's really good for the nervous system to just support the nervous system. So just getting a really good quality, magnesium, I think probably doesn't hurt too much and just like helps just with the nervous system. But that's it.
Yeah, it's like I have fish oil there for the days that I feel
No,
like.
don't do fish oil.
Oh, you
Fish
don't.
oil's the
You,
worst.
you don't do fish oil?
No fish oil.
Weird. Why no to fish oil? Tell us all about cod liver oil, fish oil, all that sort of stuff.
Oh my God, no cod liver oil either. Definitely not. So this is a Ray Peat influence. So basically, because fish oil is obviously very temperature sensitive, so the fish that they use to make fish oil is a cold water fish. So the actual refining process that they use to make the fish oil means that by the time the fish oil is in the capsules, it's already rancid. So that means that it's already like not an antioxidant, it's already like an oxidant. Like it's creating inflammation. And then because of that sensitivity of that oil, by the time those bottles by the time they're like shipped and sitting anywhere in any type of temperature, they're rendered rancid.
True.
So,
and you wouldn't be able to tell by opening it up and smelling it. Sort of. It's like just.
They deodorize them. They do all
right.
sorts of stuff. Like fish oil is basically like, send me a message after and I'll send you a link and you can do some reading.
Yeah.
It's basically for you, especially like it's estrogenic. It ends up being estrogenic.
Oh, I don't want that.
No. So you actually don't need to take fish oil because you're eating the oysters.
Yeah, I do have a lot of fish. Yeah, I'll have probably 2 servings of fish a week plus my oysters. Just intuitive, right? The Czech stuff. I'm pretty intuitive. Like I crave when I want fish. I know when I want lamb. I know when I want beef.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
eh?
like
Oysters are the fucking
they're so good.
They are the like. Not only they taste like I love the taste, but like if you want to feel horny, they are the like I'll have 6. The next day I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? I feel like a beast.
Yeah,
and because
nature's aphrodisiac,
Well,
right?
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
that's where
well,
we
that's a
wonder
dead
about
giveaway,
the like for like principle with things. Because I remember, do you know Dr. Pran?
No.
Dr. Pran Yoganathan? Oh, you got to get it.
Oh yeah. I love him.
Yeah. Like we're friends with him, and we're chatting to him about it, and he's like about the like for like principle, like testicles for testicles, like. And he's like, well, really, it is like it's a similar amino acid profile to what yours would be, so your body would be able to grab it and use it in that sense, because king, like the testicles. Well, our friend Adam Kavanagh, he goes out and hunts and gets pig testicles and eats them, and he goes, man, nothing gives you more high than pig testicles. Like it's like you're on,
Yeah.
like just cooks
He
on.
eats them?
Yeah, he shoots it with a bow in Northern Territory.
He
and then
chases animals down.
chases it down. It's some wild shit. Anyway, but when
How does he cook them?
just
Do
on
they
the
taste
fire,
good?
just on the fire, yeah. And I think, well, they taste sort of like I know when I had beef, was it beef testicles we had, Harry, that time? Was that beef testicles? Yeah, it tastes like scallops almost. It's actually not that bad. Yeah. But but there is definitely, it made us hornier, and one stage, like I'm not sure if I should say this or not, but like I'll
He
say,
was just
okay,
looking
my
at
friend,
me
right?
and he was like,
My friend, and Queen, because Queen's uterine tissue, fallopian tubes, and liver, right? And then he gave his missus Queen, and then she woke him up in the middle of the night for sex, and she forgot she had it. And he goes, man, she doesn't usually do that. Not in the middle of the night, just like grabbed him in the middle of the night. It was like, it was on, and So like the king and queen together for a couple, I think is gold. But I noticed also one time I had it and I was sitting on the computer and I felt really horny and I was like, why do I feel so horny right now?
Yeah.
And I forgot I had it. And then I realized I had like 7 capsules too because I just loaded up and I was like, oh, okay. But there's a limit to that for sure. But
yeah, that's what I love about like, and we're honest with it. We're like, if you're going to take this product, like it's $100 for the jar, right? And we're like, well, that should last you 2 months because it's like, I mean, unless you're taking it every day, take 1 or 2 a day. You wouldn't take like 5 a day every day. Even on the bottle, it says take 4. But just intuitively, I feel like you would be like, okay, I'm actually a little under today. I might just take 5 tonight, and then the next day you feel good. So it's like,
yeah, I take 4, but I don't have it every day.
not every day, exactly. Yeah, because you just intuitively, you're like, you wouldn't be eating liver every day.
Yeah, no.
Like your body, if you're listening to your body, I feel like yeah. Would you know more about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I guess from a micronutrient perspective for women that are trying to conceive, so if they're taking
Yeah.
Queen, probably just still say to do this. So most women are totally not eating nutrient dense foods, right? They're eating pro-inflammatory foods. They've got like probably like low level leaky gut where they're not absorbing nutrients. Every woman I've ever met is anemic. Every woman's low in iron, so there you just know that she's going to be low in everything else. So I feel like for a woman that is in the preconceptive stage, and let's face it, most women don't do any proper preconceptive preparation except for like the moment they want to have a baby, they want it to be next month.
Yeah.
So, like if I can get them to do like a 4 to 6 month period where they can just like start to like deeply nourish,
Yeah.
actually build those stores up, because again, to come back to the Western A price stuff, like the reason that they all had those beautiful faces, like straight teeth, wide arches, like all the things that none of us have now, is because they all had really good stores of all of those essential micronutrients, especially the fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K2. And especially like a lot of that work, the building of the jigsaw puzzle of the baby, that happens from week 8 to 12 of gestation.
Okay.
So like if you haven't done a single thing to build those nutrient stores and then you find out that you're pregnant at week 6, then 2 weeks after that, all of that stuff is happening. So what happens in that first trimester is you guys have seen a 12-week scan, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you guys have kids?
No.
Okay, but your
We
friends
got
have
dogs. We got dogs.
Just Instagram stories anyway.
dogs are the best. Dogs are the best.
Same thing, right?
Except you don't get an ultrasound photo, but you've seen your friends, right? You've seen your
Yes.
friends shoot those little, like the ultrasound photos at 12 weeks. It's literally like a little baby bouncing around in there. You can see the head, you can see the skeleton. The only thing that's not formed, I think, is like the fingers and toes. Most of that, like baking of that fully formed baby cake, is done from week 8 to 12. So that's like laying down the structure of the skeletal system, the position of all of the organs, the placement of the organs, 4 chambers of the heart, like everything. And it's done with the micronutrients. So it's basically predicated on the level of micronutrients that woman has stored for her entire life. And most people think a baby comes out and like, there it is, it's a healthy baby, yes or no, right? But literally like that period from 8 to 12 is literally determining the health of that baby, and actually for the whole pregnancy is determining the health of that human for life.
Fuck,
So
man.
like
That's
I
wild.
have straight teeth genetically, or not genetically, whatever, like that was something that worked in my favor. But I, like most humans, have like other facial elements that aren't the way that Western A Price wanted them to be. Like I don't have that broad facial structure. Like I can obviously nasally breathe, and I have healthy teeth. But most people have a degenerated facial structure and most people have teeth like bashed crabs. And I'm a mum of a nearly 9-year-old son, and looking around at my son's cohort, fuck. Like we are degenerated. Like we are Pottinger's cats. Have you guys read that book?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
We are like the cats that are falling off the thing. Like that, these kids, they are, Weston A. Price would roll in his grave. These children are compromised. And that's something that, you know, it's not just aesthetics that they're all going to need $10,000 worth of orthodontics and everything's going to be okay. No, they all have learning difficulties because they're not even breathing through their nose. So they're not even able to get into deep REM sleep and actually repair their brain at nighttime. So they've all got, not all of them, but lots of them, they've got, you know, they're breathing through their mouth. So there's going to be, you know, entire nervous
sympathetic response constantly. Yeah,
exactly. You know, and then they're going to have potentially issues with their bones. They're going to have most of the kids have already had like grommets or adenoids removed because they've got like all of those sinus issues.
It's just ADHD though.
It's just, you just need some speed. You just need some ketamine and you'll be fine. But ADHD is the same thing. So it's like, it's not even just about like the baby being healthy, right? It's about even just when the baby comes out, the risk of tongue and lip tie is going to be so much higher because they haven't had adequate levels of copper. So that's like affecting fascial development. So then they can't latch and then they can't feed and then they end up on formula. So it's just like everything cascades from like what happens even before gestation has occurred. So I would say to anyone that was taking Queen, like just take it every day. Don't take it intuitively. So they might need to spend a bit more money, but it's worth it because it's like the long-term health of that baby, that thing that you guys will no doubt eventually become dads, and it's like the most important thing, your child. And that's what women really feel. So they will do that and they'll pay anything.
That's great.
But nobody knows that.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Nobody thinks that that's important. And it's like, yeah, just like calm down and take a minute to prepare your body. Like in a perfect world, every woman would take 1 to 2 years and like deeply nourish.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you're lucky if you can get them to do like 3 months, which is like the potentiality improvement cycle.
I do see like two or three of my friends have had babies recently, and they're across the board pretty healthy. Like my good friend Tommy, and they won't mind me talking about him. Tommy and Jade is a great example, but she was very well nourished. And I lived with them for 2 years before they had the baby, and they're just on point with their food, absolutely on point. Like they don't have coffee until they've had they're good. And it's all organic and stuff like that. And their baby, man, is so goddamn calm.
Really?
Like, because I've seen so many other babies and they're just like fucking, they're just aggressive. And like this baby is very calm. It's different. Like, and I don't know much about, you know, babies. I haven't had one yet, but like I definitely noticed that. I'm like, oh my God, like that's different.
It's going to be rough because whoever my missus is at the time when I have a child, I'm going to almost be like, I'll be feeding her and shit. But listen, all right, you need to have your oysters. You need to have this. I'll be thinking about her, not only her, but my child.
Yeah,
like,
how fun will that be?
Building like a little king or queen inside them. That's why it's important who you partner with, right? But there's another cool, do you know who Andre Hedger is?
No.
He's a dentist. He's like the modern Weston A. Price, right? He's probably
I need to write this down.
Yeah.
I need to know.
He went on Matthew Walden's podcast. You know Matt Walden?
Yeah, I know Matt Walden.
Yeah, went on his podcast. It's a really cool podcast about, anyway, he's a dentist from London. He's probably close to 80 now, but he went to Ethiopia and basically did modern Weston A. Price stuff. So he went to Ethiopia and assessed 80 children's teeth. And then he's in London because you can imagine they're known for the fucking crowded teeth, right? They've just had
bash crabs.
Yeah, bash crabs.
London.
Wish I could think of another funny thing to call.
Bash crab is such a hectic.
Such a hectic. But
I shouldn't say that, should I?
No, you're good. They're bash
Good
crabs.
analogy.
Yeah. And basically he goes 1 in 80 won't have crowded teeth in London, and he goes 1 in 80 will have crowded teeth in Ethiopia. So he's talking about, he goes, all these Ethiopian kids, they don't have this problem. And he goes, why do we have this all in London? And he also speaks about not only obviously from the Western price nutrition side of things, but also how you're talking about, what is it called? The enteology, the evolution of the species during life. And then there's the other ology where it's like our evolution of a species over millennia. But anyway, basically the harder the food, the wider the jaw for everything in the animal kingdom.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to chew food.
You got to chew food. So these kids are eating jerky.
Jerky.
They're walking
It's
around
jerky.
jerky.
That's
Yeah.
sick.
And they chew
Yeah.
them, and it widens the mandible. And when you're
Widens
talking
the
about
jaw.
yeah,
Yeah.
and when you're talking about the latching on, that like there's the jaw has to protrude. So people think when a baby sucks, it's like sucking like a just like this, but the jaw expresses itself anterior, like forward, which then creates space of that TMJ and strengthens and sucks it. So that in itself, there's all these things, all these fucking things, you know,
Totally.
and these
Yeah.
vegan kids growing up on soft food, tiny crowded teeth. When they're tiny, they're the smallest kid in the and I remember I heard Jolene Brighton, not Jolene Brighton, Gabrielle Lyon talk about the less protein a child has, the smaller they are of what we find. If the kid has less protein, they're going to be the smallest kid in the class, right? And I've heard of a friend that's a teacher had a vegan child come in, and he goes, it was just tiny. He was just so malnourished, like didn't realize, and he was the smallest kid ever. Because the body will realize, okay, this amount of protein is coming in. We better not grow them too big because there's not enough to sustain that. So let's grow them at this rate because this is what they're going to survive. Otherwise, that kid will die. And it's just a fucking savage world, isn't it?
Yeah, and for me, I was looking at that too, and I was like, the jaw's so linked to respiratory rate, so breathing rate, and it's like I was a stressed kid and I didn't even know it, just because I was having Coca-Cola every night and just shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sympathetic and I didn't know what normal was. I remember the first time I switched was like unreal. I was like, oh my God, I feel the calmest I ever have. And I wanted that every day. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't even know that was possible. And that was the first time my nervous system switched. That's just nuts.
I have to ask you something too before we wrap it. Well, this is flown by. But another story. Do you have any really cool stories about someone that couldn't get pregnant and that got pregnant with your work?
So many.
Yeah.
Let me think. There's been heaps lately, actually. So I'll just sort of run through a couple that are just like recent, and probably a couple of them are up on my Instagram if anyone wants to go watch, because I've started to record video testimonials.
Beautiful.
So they pretty much all have endo. So I had one girl, God, she was a mess, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying, but I won't name her name. She had like low thyroid, fibromyalgia, endo, overweight, PCOS, so like the whole kit and caboodle, just like walking around in chronic pain, nauseated all day, like she was pregnant, but she wasn't pregnant. Basically, they'd said like extremely bad endo. They'd said, look, you're not going to be able to likely, because obviously they tell the girls, like, firstly, it's a disease, there's nothing you can do except get surgery, which she had the surgery, which, you know, most of them just end up getting subsequent surgeries because it just grows back. It's like trimming a tree and then hoping the plant's going to die. So she'd had more, at least one, if not more surgeries. And they just said, look, likelihood of you falling pregnant is like very minimal. So just come back and we'll sort you out with IVF. And she luckily decided to trust me and work with me. And she's like, I really just want to see if I can just feel a little bit better, because I feel like rubbish all the live long day. And I just want to feel a little bit better, like even 10% better.
Yeah.
So she did all of the stuff that we do, did like the special diet, and obviously ate regularly. And firstly, everything fixed, like everything went away, pain went away, nausea went away, cognitive function improved, energy levels went through the roof. She was just like, I feel normal, no pain during menstruation. Like I feel like my endo's gone. Just, she was like, this is enough. Like I'm good, I'm fine. And then we actually like forgot to book a follow-up session. So she ended up staying on the diet a little bit longer. And then one day she was, because I've got a group chat, and we have a weekly group session, and she piped up into the group chat, and I was like, I haven't seen her for a while. So I reached out and was like, hey, we need a session. What's happening? And we booked a session. We went through everything. So basically we set goals, and she was like, had gone from like a 1 to 2 out of 10 for everything to a 10 out of 10, 9 or 9 out of 10. Like everything was fixed. And then I think she said, I'm going to start trying, but oh no, she said, I've contacted the IVF clinic, feeling so good now, we're going to go in. And then literally like after that session, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I got a text message from her saying, you're not going to believe this, but I'm pregnant.
Wow.
I don't know how this is possible, because they told me that I would never fall pregnant, but here I am without IVF. And we actually recorded a testimonial video about maybe a week or 2 ago, and she's like 20 weeks pregnant now. So
Wow.
good. And that's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Like
That's
sort
it.
of, yeah. Like I had another lady, I won't tell as long a version of the story, but she had like maybe 9 or 10 failed IVF cycles.
Whoa.
She'd had both of her fallopian tubes removed because of like, without her consent, actually, in one of her surgeries, because of how severe her endo was. And just an absolute shit show, same thing. And again, we did all of the work, and I just said, can you just wait a little while and let your body properly heal before you do another cycle? Because her IVF doctors kept wanting her to just keep going back. And I'm like, you're flogging a dead horse. So she just listened and took that break. And then she went back. Firstly, she got the best, because obviously she can't conceive naturally. She doesn't have the tubes. She got, for the first time ever, all the embryos were grade A, which was like, I've never had that, because like she'd actually like worked on her egg quality. And she went back and did a cycle, and it worked out, like, which sometimes it does and then it doesn't. She was just like, I know it's going to end, because she'd had heaps of miscarriages. And now she's maybe like 30 weeks pregnant. She's,
Fuck yeah.
It's beautiful work, because the population is declining, right? So like if 2 people are having 2 kids, well, that's just keeping it even. 2 people need to have 3 kids. And these days, men's testosterone's dropping to they're like not even men anymore, right? So you can imagine their sperm quality is just weak, and then females can't get pregnant, and it's just this vicious cycle of sickness, and it's like just the West is falling,
Yeah.
and
the empire's crashing down.
and it's doing it to ourselves. Like it's a crazy world, and when especially when you see these women that are doing all these things, and their guy could be fucking doing trash and have the weakest seed ever, because he just eats shit too, and it's like you almost need to work with the couple.
Well, I try and work with the couple. At the very least, I want the man to be taking the liver and the oyster, or the king, supplement, as well as the queen supplement, because, like, he's got to do his part. And that's what I always say. Once you're pregnant, well, I guess the onus is a little bit more on her, because she has to have the stores, because she has to do all of that legwork for those 9 months, those 40-ish weeks of gestation. That's on her. And that is totally dependent on what she's done for her entire life prior to that conception moment. But in that moment of conception, it's a 50-50 game. And, a lot of women that experience continual miscarriage is actually the male fertility factor that's contributing to that. And I'm seeing so many couples where the guy's got, something is wrong with his sperm, whether it's like morphology or count or quality or whatever it is. And they're not really doing anything about it. And now the solution is, I don't know if you've heard of ICSI.
No.
Do you know what that is?
No.
So what they do in IVF, so in like a normal couple that doesn't have any issues with sperm or egg, or not that they can really tell with egg, but if there's no issues, they will let the sperm and the egg naturally choose each other, which, by the way, the egg chooses the sperm, not the other way around. So, of course, we're the bosses.
I didn't know that. I thought it was just the first one that gets there.
No, I know. Everyone
it's the
thinks this is the
selection,
thing.
eh?
This is the patriarchy at work, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I knew
The
that.
sperm doesn't choose the egg. The egg, there's like these amazing videos. Look them up and see if you can find it on YouTube, where you can see the egg, like it basically like gets these weird arms, and it like reaches down and it like pulls the sperm in. So like with IVF, they let that happen naturally. But now, because there's so many issues with sperm, what they do, and this, I mean, I know people have to do this, so, you know, if you have to do this, it's okay. It'll be okay. Just take the king or the queen supplements and you'll be okay. But so under a microscope, the embryologist will literally choose the sperm.
Whoa.
Whoa.
That's like messing with
Fuck.
like that moment of conception and that like choice that is genetically ideal, right? It's
Yeah,
messing
yeah.
with that.
That's
Because
deep.
we don't know with our
No.
eyes. An embryologist doesn't really know. Like obviously
No.
they're looking for like a sperm that doesn't have two heads and various criteria, but they don't actually know which is the perfect one. And like for instance, one of my clients, her husband has a sperm issue and they just really wanted her to do ICSI, and she insisted on just doing one that wasn't ICSI, and that was the only one that resulted in an embryo.
Fuck.
Wow. Not like that's pretty
powerful,
crazy.
man.
I'm not sure if we should say this, but we had a sexologist on the podcast,
Yeah.
and she was like, another guy that she was with was unhealthy, and she goes, and he tasted disgusting. And then she goes, and then the guy that she's with now, who's a friend of ours, who's really into health, she goes, it tastes amazing. It's like sweet. It's like, so even I've always thought about like, I wonder if there's some form of a taste thing that represents the sperm quality for the woman. Like it can go that deep that there's not even science on that yet. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can imagine that like any bodily, like, so your bodily fluid, sperm is just a bodily fluid, right?
Yeah.
And anyone that is unhealthy generally is excreting fluids that don't smell great.
so like
Like
BOA. Yeah.
someone with BO
Yeah.
or like bad breath, you know, that's an expression of toxic release, right? And so that even the seminal fluid is also going to be a representation of that. So if it tastes bad, it's just that it's like more toxic.
Yeah. Ooh.
Ew.
Oh, I think that's a perfect thing to wrap it up on.
Yeah. And big shout out to Kathy Carr for hooking this podcast up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah,
a
she's a legend.
she's a beautiful human, and God bless you guys for just like, you know, fighting the fight for the women out there. Lots of love to you both.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
keep doing what you're doing. And for people to find you, they just type in Sarah Hopkins with that P on Instagram.
I'm Shopkins at Shopkins Health
Okay, cool.
Okay.
on Instagram. And that's probably like the easiest and fastest way. Otherwise, health-wellbeing is my website. But if you Google Sarah Hopkins, yeah, you'll find me.
Well, I typed your name in and that popped up. It brought that up anyway. So
Awesome.
yeah. So
Yeah.
and do you work online with people?
Yeah, I do. So all of my work is pretty much online now. So
Yeah.
one-on-one coaching, and I've got obviously Kathy working as a support coach for me,
Hell
and
yeah.
a community of amazing women to support each other. So
That's
yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
I love
thank you
how
so much.
you know how we. I
Thank
love how we
you,
didn't know what we were
guys.
going to talk about. It ended up being the best conversation ever.
Yeah, fully.
I
That was
know,
such a
it
good
was
podcast.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
Well,
guys.
thank you. We'll link all your stuff in the show notes. But yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks
keep-
for coming on.
Keep in touch. Much love.
Definitely send me your stuff.
I will.
Yeah,
We'll send you our queen and,
Yeah.
and King. You're with your husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll send him one too.
Yeah, he needs some. Actually, no, he does not need some.
Yeah.
All right. We'll sort you out. All right. Thank
Hell
you.
yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll get that to you.
Thanks.
Bye.